6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit and we have liftoff at 2:13. 7.5 million pounds of thrust, and it has cleared the tower.
Prepare yourself for a world of science. This is Science.
Good morning, everybody. Conley here with Science Nights in the morning, and we have two nights assembled today. We have Dr. Thomas Shiller, and all the way from Australia, Dr. Sean Graham. And I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, Cody McCollum. Right?
Yes, sir.
All right. What's up? How's it going?
How's it going? Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Cool, man. I'm really excited for the show today because we're talking about one of my favorite consumables within the culinary world, you could say, is mushrooms.
Pizza.
I love, mushroom. Hey, mushrooms and black olives are my go-to for pizza right now.
Yeah.
And the green bell peppers, those are awesome. So, but we're going to be talking about all fungi today. Now, you are with Big Bend Fungi, right, Cody?
Yeah, so I started the Big Bend Fungi company about a year ago, and we grow gourmet and medicinal mushrooms, and we serve the community of the Big Bend. And things are going good. Things are going good. We're going to continue to do that and branch off into more research-type things with fungi.
That's cool. Now, I checked your Instagram out, and it literally looks like you are in like a laboratory because like all these mushrooms that you have growing, they look so interesting. They're like otherworldly. Their structures, their biological structure seems almost otherworldly. So tell me exactly what a mushroom is and where are mushrooms in our floral faunal kind of environment that we have?
Sure. So a mushroom is actually the fruiting body of what they call mycelia or mycelium. So the mycelium functions almost as the root system of the mushroom, and that's really the main structure. The mushroom is just the fruiting body. So once this mycelium has done what they called colonizing or decomposing dead organic matter, whatever it may be, once this cycle's been completed, it knows that it's over and it's time to continue the cycle, and it does that by producing a mushroom, which then drops spores, which spread out and start the process over again.
Interesting.
And they're not within the plant kingdom, right? They're their own kingdom. So it's not a flora fauna thing. It's an even weirder kingdom of organisms.
What kind of kingdom is that? Like, what is that? Like you get past the main boss, but there's like this optional boss that you get to go to. Is it kind of like that?
Yep. And they call it kingdom fungi.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, they're unique. They're their own separate, not quite plants, not quite animals.
Oh, wow. Well, okay. So what do vegans do?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't know if any of us can answer that question.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, they obviously tell us constantly that they're vegan. We know that.
They're sad and malnourished.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that they do eat mushrooms.
Okay,
so.
well, good. Yeah, mushrooms are all clear on that.
Well, they're kind of a popular meat
We don't want to alienate our West Texas vegan audience.
Yeah, sorry, vegans.
Of one person. We don't want to alienate that one person.
We love our vegans. We love them, and we cherish them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right, continuing on with the fungi talk. Sean, did you have any questions as far as like what fungi is and what do you know about it?
I think it might be good to mention that, like, so I'm not super clear on exactly where fungi are on the on the organism family tree, but it's good to, like, so plants and animals are multicellular critters that have cells with nuclei, with a nucleus in the cell. And, everything that's not multicellular, we dump into this big garbage can called the protists. The protists are single-celled organisms with nuclei. And so it's helpful to remember that fungi is a third group of multicellular organisms with cells with nucleus. So within all these weird little protists that we have floating around in the ocean, there are close relatives of the things that gave rise to plants and the things that gave rise to animals. They're all, we can point to single-celled organisms that look like these things. And so the fungi are yet a third group that arose and became multicellular from that kind of primordial soup. Absolutely. And so that's what we're talking about here. And they do things totally differently than plants do, totally different than animals do. So it really is this third group of organisms that doesn't really get much street cred because you don't really realize they're there. You don't realize how much they're doing for the environment, but they are doing a lot. And I'm hoping we'll get to a lot of that stuff. That Cody will be able to tell us a bunch of that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
And just to build off of that, how you said it's there, but we might not even notice it. So in a typical cubic inch of soil, they believe there to be possibly about 8 miles of hyphae, which are the strands that make up the mycelium. And also to build off that is that they also believe that mycelium was the root system for plants before they evolved the root system.
Oh, wow.
And
that is
so
awesome.
still currently mycelium that's under the ground mediates the environment around it. So say it's growing in a patch of oak trees, and there's some really big oak trees, but there's some young ones trying to come up, but because they're under these large ones, they can't get enough sun, maybe not enough nutrients. The mycelium will cut the nutrients off from the bigger trees that doesn't need it and send it to these smaller trees to get them along. But it's intelligent in that it's not just helping these trees survive. If it realizes that it's not a good decision for this tree to continue to grow, it will make the decision and cut off the nutrients to this tree. So they help mediate our environment in several different ways.
Well, they're really important for a lot of desert plants too, right? They have to have that, is it called mycorrhiza, whatever the fungi that live on the roots of a lot of desert plants?
Absolutely.
That fix nitrogen. So like a ocotillo won't survive if it doesn't have that symbiotic fungi that lives on the root system.
Absolutely. Really? Well, how does the arid environment affect how fungi grows out here?
Well, you don't see much of it because it's not human, or it's not humid. So the fruit bodies tend to not develop, although there may be mycelium under the ground. But we do have things like lichen, which are very effective in breaking down that rock into soil and things like that. So that helps the plants, get something to grow in. So they definitely play a role in that aspect.
Wow. So
yeah, they're kind of one of the unsung heroes in the process of weathering of rocks. You wouldn't think of lichens as being really effective at weathering something, but over years and years they can break down a boulder-sized piece of granite.
Wow. And whenever you study your rocks like that, can you tell just right off the bat, okay, yeah, this was totally...
Well, you can see them actively growing on rocks. Not
okay.
like in the low desert areas that I tend to work, but if you go up into the mountains, that kind of desert varnish that you see on rocks, oftentimes you'll see these lichens that are encrusting the rock as well, and there's biochemical reactions going on there, and they're slowly but surely chemically breaking them down.
If you go to the Chisos Mountains, you've all seen the rocks there. They almost look like they've been painted with splashes of bright yellow.
Right.
And that's the type of lichen that's all over the place down there. That's growing on bare rock. And it gives, like, if you take a good photo of something off the Lost Mine Trail or something like that, it's always got those really beautiful bright yellow lichens. And people who aren't familiar might be like, "Oh, somebody must have spray painted that rock." It's a lichen, which is a fungus and that's partnered with some sort of photosynthetic organism. That's what a lichen is.
Would that make it that bright? Is there a reason why it's that color?
Well, so I think the photosynthetic partner is usually responsible for the bright colors, but I'm not sure if it's the same way that like the bright colors of leaves like autumn leaves are because that's what that's
I see.
from, because it's a photosynthetic pigment that's giving it that bright color. But I'm not. Do you know that, Cody? Do you know if it's because fungi are colorful, so it could just be that they're just different colors.
And it could possibly be that it's spreading its spores out, and those spores are the actual color. But I'm not 100% sure. And it's the same. They have a bioluminescent mushroom, and they're not exactly sure what that function or what that bioluminescence, what function it serves, but they do have glow in the dark mushrooms. So
wow, man.
Yeah, that's cool. Dang, and I think when you mentioned that the mycelium is this kind of almost root-like structure, and that plants, it's an interesting idea that plants would have originally depended on mycelium and then eventually grew their own roots. And that points to kind of a big difference between plants and fungi and what fungi are really good at. So plants, their root systems are really only good at pulling water out of the soil. And they use that to grow. They need the water for photosynthesis. They need it to grow. They need it for water transport through the whole plant. The roots are pretty good at getting water out of the soil. Plants really aren't that good at pulling nutrients out of the soil. That's what fungi are good at. Fungi are good at absorption. They've got these millions of little kind of cellular tendrils throughout the whole soil, and they're picking up any kind of nutrients, any kind of decaying organic material, and absorbing that into their own tissue. And so a lot of fungi partner with plants to pull that nutrient stuff out of the soil, provide it to the plants in return for a kickback from the plants. The plants will give them some of the sugars they're making from photosynthesis. So they partner up. And that's what Dr. Shiller was talking about when he's talking about these partnerships between plants and fungi. And the more we look, the more we find that there's a ton of those partnerships. When it was first discovered, it was like, oh, wow, this was like a really cool mutualism between plants and fungi in these couple of examples. And then they just started looking and realizing that nearly all plants on Earth have these partnerships with fungi.
Absolutely.
So let's kind of like illustrate something here, because this is really interesting. There's a lot of fungi is it fungi or fungi?
I think either one.
Either one's
derived
cool. Depends on your level of snobbiness, I think.
It's derived. It's derived from Latin, I think. So it's like a hard G or a soft G. There might be some debate, but either one is correct, I believe.
Okay. I think the snobby Brits call it fungi.
Fungi. Oh,
so
yeah.
There's even a third
fungi.
snobbier way of saying it.
Yeah, oh, man.
Sorry to our British listeners.
Our one British listener over there with Honor Bond. Anyway, so let's paint a picture here. Okay, fungi are so powerful, and they're such great absorbers, right? Because whenever you throw them in a dish, it absorbs all those flavors, and it makes that little nugget of beauty like just taste absolutely immaculate. Now, say we're going into your laboratory, right, where you grow these.
Yeah.
Like, when you open up the doors, especially like I'm just imagining like a Stranger Things scene over here, like just like in my brain, you're opening up the doors and there's light coming through in this really dark, humid space, and you see spores everywhere, but you can't really see them. They're just kind of in the light. Is that what it looks like? Or describe to me what it looks like in your lab.
Well, in the grow space, we call it a fruiting chamber, because we have a laboratory where we do lab work and more work with the mycelium. But I think you're talking about the fruiting chamber is what it's called. Okay. And it's a dark room. We do use light, but we try to use a lot of natural light because the mushrooms aren't photosynthetic, but they're phototropic or photosensitive. So they'll move towards light. It can give them some direction to grow in the ways that you want them to grow. But it's we maintain it. It's cold, so they like it a little on the colder side, between about 55 and 65 degrees, because that cooler temperature also triggers that mycelium to fruit. So it tells the mushroom, hey, it's getting cold, things are dying, it's probably time to try this again. But the fruiting chamber, it has a dense fog. We keep it at about 98% humidity, so it's very foggy. And it's like another world, you know. Every time I go in there, I just get that feeling of amazement. It's just
Yeah.
these things, they seem otherworldly, and they very well may be.
Yeah,
Kind of sounds like you're replicating the Pacific Northwest or something.
Sure, and almost like a forest floor, because we move it through some changes with the CO2. When we're trying to get the mushrooms to start to form at first, the CO2 is a little higher, and then as they would grow out of that debris that's in the forest floor, we add in more fresh air, and that also triggers them to grow and reproduce.
Wow. So okay, talking about, and we're going to get into this more during next break. We have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
But before I allude to this, because we were talking about using it in food, right, and consuming it, we're going to get to that next break. But what is going on with the gills, and what is the anatomy of a mushroom, and how does each part kind of work together?
Sure. Well, there's different parts to a mushroom, depending on, and different types, of course. So you have the gills, which have gills, and you can see those. And then there's things like a polypore mushroom, which has pores, and it drops the spores out of these pores. The gilled mushroom drops it from the gills. But basically you have, generally speaking, you have a stem and a cap, and then some type of like the gills to drop the spores from. And when you see a mushroom first start to form, it's about this big, very tiny, about a quarter of a centimeter, and it just looks like a little pin, and it's all in there, and then they grow very quickly. So they grow from that size to, huge in about a week to 10 days.
What's the green flag? Like what's telling it? Okay, go. Grow.
Fresh air.
Fresh air. Okay.
So throughout the whole process, we keep we use bags and filters that keep the fresh air from entering, and that's one of the pinning triggers, is what they call it. So when we put it in the fruiting chamber, the reduction in temperature, the increase in fresh air, and the light, all these things combined tell the mushroom we've probably reached the outside of the trunk of the tree or the top of the ground, and now it's time to produce a mushroom.
Sweet.
Yeah, I had a quick question. We're using the term mushroom. Do you use that collectively for all fungi, or is that a specific term that you use for the fruiting body?
It is a specific term for the fruiting body. So not all mycelia form mushrooms, but all mushrooms come from mycelia.
Okay, gotcha.
Interesting. And how, like, say you have a 1 by 1 block, right? A perfect square of mycelium, right? Because we've seen those, right?
Sure.
How many mushrooms can you expect that block 1 by 1, 1 foot by 1 foot to produce? Can it go on and on and on?
It can.
Really?
And so we kind of do industry standards. We let it, what they call, flush or produce mushrooms twice, and then we compost the block and get rid of it, just for to keep things clean and moving out, and because each time it produces, it will take a little longer. But those blocks that we have in the fruiting room, they can produce up to 10, 11 times if you keep. Sometimes you might have to take that block halfway through and rehydrate it. But several people get multiple flushes out of a single block, and it'll just shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink that block. And interestingly, you get less mushrooms each flush, but they're bigger.
Right.
So at the end of 3 or 4 flushes, you may just end up with one single massive mushroom, which is pretty cool too.
So you're just growing these on a block mixed with substrate?
Yes.
Okay.
So we do everything in-house, and we use biodegradable plastic, and it's a mixture of soy hulls and sawdust, and then we add a proper amount of water. Sometimes we supplement it with things like wheat bran, and everything's measured out. We check the moisture content, and then we inoculate it, which means we add the myceliated grain spawn. And then, again, we put it in incubation for about 10 days, and then after that, we throw it in the grow room, cut it open, and expect to see some mushrooms pretty soon.
cool.
That's awesome. Well, we're about to go to our next commercial break. Afterwards, we're going to be talking more about your process of actually creating these things, and then also the process of us consuming them, right? Because there's a lot of different ways we can consume them. There's ways we can cook them. I have a personal question that apparently I've been doing it wrong for years, but I don't think so. We'll talk about that. And then also medicinal purposes, too, next break. So we'll see you then.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Science Nights here. We got a very special guest who's talking to us about production, commercial production of fungi. And I guess I'll bring it in by asking a question. So you mentioned that you inoculate your kind of source material that the fungi is going to grow off of. Where do those come from? I guess, is there some big, massive corporate supplier,
like a big barrel?
Yeah, fungi or us.
Yeah. So who do you buy your source fungi from?
So we do everything in house. So when we started, you can buy commercial strains of mushrooms and things like that. They're called cultures. But once the mushroom produces, if you catch the spores from that mushroom, it's considered kind of your genetic thing. So,
right. So did you get your original stocks from the field, from the wild?
No, we didn't. They have some commercial strains that we got that are very reliable and things like that. But we did start off a few of our strains that were still growing from spore. So we did the whole thing like that. But we do everything. We make our own petri dishes. We pour our own plates. We make our own bags. Some companies, have the mycelium kind of shipped in. We do everything in-house. And it's way better because we can keep better quality control on the product and things like that. And you never know what can happen during shipping. So,
I bet it's nice, like making your own petri dishes too, because you know exactly what's on it, like at the microscopic level, to where you order something off a petri dishes are us, right, Tom?
Sure.
And you don't know what's on it.
Sure. Yeah, it's basically just running the same science experiment over and over and over again. And so by making our own petri dishes, we remove a variable. Because things can go wrong at every step of the mushroom growing process. And the more we do it ourselves, we can eliminate that outside factor of maybe they didn't do it right, maybe they were off that day or something like that. And it also helps us learn the process and really see what's going on and really connect with these mushrooms.
That's awesome, man.
Is it common practice now to grow them in these cubes like you described? Because I always imagine, and I've probably seen like documentaries about it, where they grow, your standard mushroom that you get at the grocery store, like on a plate of manure. Like that was, when I was a kid, you always wash the hell out of your mushrooms because the presumption is that they're covered in crap. So has that changed? Is that now the standard to grow them in these cool little self-contained cubes?
I think they still grow like the white button mushrooms in that style. But yes, the blocks is the new style. One, it keeps it clean. So you're not having to clean anything at the end of it. You can just throw out the block. It's easy to manage. And the biggest thing is keeping everything clean. It keeps everything a lot cleaner. And the mushrooms really like a clean environment, nice fresh air, things like that. So
yeah, your method sounds a little more appetizing than
No, that leads us into that personal question I was alluding to last break. Listen, man, I've been eating mushrooms for as long as I can remember, like in my 20s. Like before then, I was really picky, right? But you grow into where you really appreciate earthy things. I drink unsweet tea. Like the more earthier, the better. And every time I have consumed a mushroom or got it from the store, I never wash it. I just eat the dirt on it with it. I'm cool with it. It tastes good. And I never pick. A lot of people are like, oh, just scrape the gills out and you like prep it and then you cut the ends off, to get that little tough end piece off. Oh, and then you got to wash it and get all the see all the dirt on it. And I'm just like, throw it in there, man. Just I'm going to eat it.
That's
its most organic
poop, Conley.
form. Is it?
That's poop.
Is it really?
But don't worry, it's human.
The grocery store stuff.
What? Have I been eating? Well,
Cody's mushrooms don't have poop on them.
Is that okay? Is
I'm
what
sure
I'm
it's
doing
fine.
okay?
Yeah, you seem to be doing fine. So.
I'm doing all right.
Yeah. Builds your immune system.
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure.
think
I
so.
do the same
I
thing,
like that.
Conley. I do the same thing. I don't wash anything. I don't wash. They're like, oh, you gotta wash your lettuce. Wash. I'm just like, man.
You gotta watch that inner thigh, you know. Anyway, yeah, okay. Well, I'm glad I'm not alone. Thank you, Sean. I feel a lot better.
If you
now.
wash your lettuce, you wash your lettuce with tap water. And if there's salmonella on there, you really think that got rid of the salmonella?
No, probably not. No.
Rinsing it with the tap water. And Alpine tap water probably has higher salmonella content than your lettuce does. So
we're going to alienate every single one of our viewers by the end of
You're not listeners. Wrong, though. You're not wrong, man. But anyway,
everyone at the water department is going to get pissed off about this.
So what Sean? What are you? Do you buy mushrooms in Australia? Is there like a mushroom store in Australia, or?
Yeah. Like you get it the same at your grocery store in the produce section. They have the nice white button mushrooms and portobellas and whatnot, the usual. And so I love throwing it in your Italian stuff and throwing it in a salad. I love mushrooms too. I'm with you. I think they're really yummy and tasty, and I would be into trying some of the more rare ones if I could afford it. You hear people talk about, what is it, morels or sorrels? Which ones?
Morels.
Morels, yeah. I don't think I've ever had one, but it sounds tasty. I'd be into that.
Well, and there's a science when you're cooking them too. Like you add all these ingredients. Like I've never understood. I know that mushroom absorbs everything, but it seems like even if you add a tiny little piece of oil, completely changes your whole cooking experience. Sure. Have y'all done that? Have y'all experienced that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love cooking with mushrooms. It's really fun. I'm like you. I don't wash them off.
All right.
Especially mine, because I know they're good.
Yeah.
I do cook them thoroughly, though. I do recommend everybody cook them thoroughly. But, it's one of those things. It's a real experience cooking with mushrooms. And after you get the basics down of sautéing it and things like that, I'm getting into things now of like smoking and grilling entire clusters, you know. And what I've come to learn is that mushrooms are kind of like meat. They will reveal how good of a cook you are. And it's just like meat. If it's cooked wrong, it's not that great. But if you get it cooked right and seasoned right, it can be one of the best things you've ever had. So, mushrooms are very fun, and they're very versatile. I tell people they're almost like tomatoes. You can put them on anything, add them to a burger, to a pizza, salad. They're very versatile. Or try something new.
I just literally, I just get a bunch of mushrooms, dirt and all, cook them, throw some herbs in there, and then I bake carrots. That's my new favorite snack, man. Like really like done baked carrots with mushrooms. Perfect.
Yeah, that sounds really
And
good.
that's your meat. Like you say, it's like a good meat substitute.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I've done mushroom burgers before.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you do it on the grill?
Uh-huh. Yeah, you take 2 big portobello mushrooms and you put an actual hamburger in between them.
What do you do with the gills? Be honest.
I don't remove the gills.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay.
So, and I don't really wash the portobellos because they don't seem to have all the poop stuff on them like the button mushrooms.
It's not poop, man. It's not. I swear. I've been eating it for a long time.
That's
I'm just going to convince myself of that.
That's a really good burger with 2 mushroom caps.
Like a protein,
beef
like
pat.
all protein stuff.
Yeah, instead of bread.
Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome, man. Make me hungry, dude.
Yeah, I'm really getting hungry, and I've seen a lot of these like cooking shows and the traveling cooking shows, and it always surprises me just the variety of edible mushrooms. Growing up, you think of mushrooms as being the Mario Brothers toadstool thing, with the cap on it.
Yeah.
But man, there's some weird stuff out there. Like what? I can't remember what they're called. They're these big, just globular, irregular things. I think they call them chicken of the forest or something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And there's just these big amorphous things that grow on logs, but they're like pure white, and I think they're really...
Are they soft? What's the...
Yeah. They appear to have the same texture as your typical mushroom, but people go out and gather them, and apparently they're really pricey. Like they're worth a lot of money, but those look delicious when they cook them up.
Oh, man.
I think you may be referring to maitake. which
Okay.
is either chicken of the woods or hen of the woods, something like that.
Yeah,
But
hen of the woods, yeah.
It's a very choice mushroom. People love it, and they call it, I think maitake translates to something like the dancing mushroom, because people would, jump for joy if they found it and do a little dance. Legend has it.
Legend has it. The lore of the chicken of the forest.
Yeah.
So whenever you, and it completely depends. Like, so if you take a mushroom and just have water and like cook that thing, you have X mushroom exhibit A. Okay.
Sure.
Now you have another mushroom, same everything, exhibit B, but instead of cooking it with water, you add your spices, you add anything else, turmeric or even like a nice steak, like the fat that's melting off the steak.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is the difference between both of those mushrooms, and does one pack a lot more nutrients than the other?
So mushrooms are kind of like meat in that cooking them brings out some nutrients.
Okay.
So I'd say they both probably have the same nutritional content.
Okay.
The flavor, of course, is going to be different, and I guess I'd compare it to like anything else. If you want that, if you want to really get the flavor of the mushroom, you could try it just plain. But if you wanted to do something a little fancier, you always have the option to add other ingredients and really experiment.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, now I know.
Nice.
All right.
Nice.
Sean, what you got? Well, as far as cooking mushrooms and maybe medicinal, we can move on to medicinal mushrooms.
Yeah. I was a little curious about. Strangely, I'm curious about the commercial aspect of this. It's interesting that the area of West Texas where our show is based. I know we have an international audience, but I will bring it back to the local. We have these small companies that supply things locally, which are really interesting. It's not a very big market, but is the fact that the Big Bend region doesn't have like Walmarts, is that what allows you to make decent money, a profit from selling mushrooms to our grocery stores? Is that how it's working? Do you get are the grocery stores there buying your mushrooms to sell to the people, or do you sell them directly to people? How does it work? We have like a coffee company. There's people selling tomatoes. We have now mushrooms. We used to have a brewer that was really popular in town, then fled. How's the business aspect work?
The business aspect, so we sell direct to restaurants throughout the Big Bend.
Restaurants. Okay.
Marfa, Fort Davis, Alpine. And then we do farmers markets. A lot of our sales are through the farmers markets and things like that. And we are planning to get into the local grocery stores. But it's a lot of mushrooms to be grown and to have those consistently. And the fact that I'm the only one out here doing it. So, it's really good, and it's allowed me this year to get kind of a head start on everything. Yeah. And doing that, I can cut down the cost of some of my production cost and things like that. And I also was able to hire some help, so we can do more now and things like that. And market mushrooms are very popular, and people, especially out here, are willing to pay what it costs for good, fresh, local produce. I mean, some of these mushrooms, we literally pick them and get them to the customer or the restaurant within 30 minutes.
Wow.
There's
fresh.
They go straight from the fruiting chamber to the transport cooler, and they're never stored or anything like that. So that's something that's unique to this area too, I believe, which works which benefits me.
Yeah, that kind of thing is taken off in certain markets. I know, I guess place like San Francisco, you can probably buy a fish at a restaurant that somebody caught right there in the bay that afternoon. Absolutely. And that's really cool. And that's I love that's happening. Because think about any other place in Texas, probably it's just the typical, chain kind of place. The Applebee's. You don't know that chicken was grown on a farm in Wisconsin and shipped down 4 weeks ago, and all that kind of mass market thing that we're all used to. We all grew up on, and it's cool to think about the fact that you're getting in there despite the fact that it's this international corporate production chain that provides most of our food.
Absolutely.
And you managed to kind of winnow your way into that market. I'm proud of you. That's great.
I sure appreciate it. I sure appreciate
That's
it.
what's special about out here. You can really like live your passion, and
Absolutely.
And yeah, you're right, Sean. When it comes to like whenever you go to Houston or Dallas or something, you're throwing your mushrooms right next to the Susie's chicken nuggets and your vitamin water, and like you move on and go to the whatever aisle,
your
the
high
wine
fructose
aisle.
corn syrup drink, and oh my God, you think about it,
I bet you those button mushrooms in the grocery store, they probably sneak in high fructose corn syrup somehow. That's something I'm really curious. I'd really like to try the mushrooms you're growing because something I've discovered with other produce is there's such a huge difference between, like a tomato, for example. A tomato you get in the grocery store. Again, we're lucky out here that we have the Fort Davis tomato place, so we get some pretty good tomatoes. But like a gross old tomato that you get at Walmart or something, compared to one that grows in your backyard in your own garden, it's like night and day. Yeah. So I kind of suspect it's the same thing with mushrooms, and probably even more so because it doesn't seem like mushrooms would have a very long shelf life.
Sure, and that's why you see those button mushrooms in the store, because they have a very long shelf life, so they can sit in storage for a while. But yeah, people tell me all the time that they don't like mushrooms, but they like my mushrooms. And I kind of feel the same way, and it's just that factor of so fresh. And so fresh, it makes a world of difference.
And you take a lot of you give the mushrooms a lot of attention, personal attention. You're connected with what you're creating, and that's what's really cool too. You're actually right now, as we're speaking right now, if you're listening to this, you are at the farmers market right now. It is 10:39 on a Saturday morning. Yes,
that's right. Come on down.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
and just on that connection to mushrooms, so we have one that's called the Big Bend Baby Gray Oyster, and I've been growing that same mushroom for over a year. So every time it produces, or every few times that it produces, we'll grab a tissue sample, put it on a agar or petri dish, and grow that mycelium out again.
Nice.
Stretch the mycelium and then start the process over, because we're looking for how aggressive is it, how consistent is it, how colorful is it, things like that, and we try to capture those characteristics and continue them on and build on them. So we really do have a close connection with the mushrooms.
And it seems like it grows, proliferates exponentially almost. It's just crazy how many you can get and how many you can produce from those. And it's just...
Absolutely. So a 15 by 100 millimeter petri dish can produce potentially up to 1 million pounds of mushrooms.
Oh my gosh.
So that's a petri dish about that big.
Dang, dude.
Yeah, so it's what they call running mycelium running. You get the mycelium going, and then you run it or stretch it out across petri dishes, across grain, across substrate blocks, and you can get a lot of mushrooms from just a little bit of mycelium.
Dang, man.
Yeah.
So the process you're describing that you use, it sounds like it's pretty efficient too. Like there not many resources go into growing a lot of product.
Sure. Yeah.
So
that's the truth. Yeah. And that's and then we take those petri dishes and we put them in cold storage. Because that mycelium, it's living, once it comes to the edge of the petri dish, it's kind of, hey, what's going on? Do I need to stop this process, or is there something else for me to do? But when we stick it in those cold temperatures, right around freezing, it kind of hibernates and waits before, is it going to get colder? Then I'll just forget it. But if it gets warmer, so when we bring it out of cold storage for a couple days, so that's another aspect of how it is fairly simple. Once we run the mycelium, then we can just store petri dishes and take them out as we need them. So, and remember, one petri dish can make 1 million pounds. So if I take one petri dish and I spread that out to 10 petri dishes, now I have 10 million. And each one of those 10 petri dishes, I can make 10 more out of each one. And you could do that quite a few times with the mycelium.
Dang. The world is your mushroom, my friend.
That's right.
And the
That's
world
right.
could become a mushroom if you have enough manpower, right? And but all right, so we have a commercial break. We're going to get to our last 10-minute segment here right after the break. More fun questions from fungi. All right, everybody, we are back. Science Nights in the morning. Dr. Sean Graham, Dr. Thomas Shiller, and Cody McCollum here in the studio with me. I'm your host, Conley Rasor. We've been chatting a lot about fungi, fungi, however you want to say it. It's all right because we're all right, baby. We are all right today, and we're having some more fun. So we were talking about consuming these fungi, right? And they're so delicious. It's fun to cook. You know, it's a completely different kind of medium when it comes to testing your culinary arts because it's a different, but it is a different experience. So, what happens to your body when you consume these? And like, I know that there's a ton of medicinal purposes. And I had an experience one time. I was out in the backyard of a house and saw this cat sitting there on all fours, just eating a mushroom, just like gnawing away at it. And then I became like me and the cat, like we met eyes, and I became that cat. And that cat became me.
You ate the mushroom too, didn't you?
I could have been the cat, but anyway.
Yeah, kind of to segue into this, I have another question. What is the nutritional value? That's something we didn't really talk about as we get into their medicinal properties. What does a mushroom have to it?
So it's very high in protein, and I believe it has vitamin D in it as well. And they're very good for things like, mushrooms typically in general, they're all going to have some anti-inflammatory and blood pressure regulation qualities to them.
Yeah, you gave me this this bottle of lion's mane, I believe.
Sure.
Man, and I'm serious, that does give you pep. Like it gave me energy in the morning. I take it every morning now. I'm going to be buying a lot more from you. Because I really do feel I like the effect that it gives me. And
sure.
So that's a fungi?
It is. So that's the lion's mane mushroom. And mushrooms, they're not a fad. People around here may be hearing about these medicinal mushrooms for the first time, but they've been used in traditional Eastern medicine for thousands of years. In places like China and Japan, they do studies with this mushroom. And things like lion's mane, it's good for focus, energy, and they use it to fight things like Alzheimer's and dementia. But it also tastes great. It tastes like crab or lobster, too. So you're really getting the best of both worlds. But you also have things like the reishi mushroom, which has anti-cancer properties and is just revered in the East. They actually refer to it as the mushroom of immortality because there's so much myth, lore, and legend tied to these mushrooms. But they're very serious medicinal mushrooms. They're not. It's not a fad. It's not a passing thing. Mushrooms have been here and they're here to stay, and they do have very good qualities that people can improve their lives with these medicines that they can even grow at home.
Wow. Yeah.
So you get those benefits just by eating a fresh mushroom, or is it better to consume the dried ones? Or
so you do get the benefits from eating the fresh mushroom, cooked, but we do a dual extract tincture because we're trying. So for lion's mane, there's hericiomes and eriniciomes, and we're trying to extract that. And some things can be extracted in water, some in alcohol. So we do both. And then we combine that extraction so it's shelf stable. And this gives you a very concentrated and potent amount of the mushroom that you probably wouldn't be able to get by just eating it.
Okay. So it's like a oil or a tincture that you
Absolutely.
Get? Very cool.
Yeah, and you taste the mushroom too. Like you actually, like whenever I took the lion's mane, you can see like some cool things like floating around in there. It's like potent, and you take it and it's crazy. I put it under my tongue. That's how I've always done it, like those kind of supplements.
Sure.
But you really do get a full, like all of your taste buds, your whole head kind of gets encapsulated, like just completely drawn to this real earthy mushroom flavor. and it's really cool, and it wakes you up, and I get pep every morning.
It's a common additive in like popular
like energy drinks.
Yeah,
and
energy
stuff,
drinks
and stuff.
Stuff like that. So I've heard of it before. I didn't know it was a mushroom though.
Minus the turpentine that they put in those things.
Yeah. I don't touch the energy drinks.
Yeah, I've really stopped.
High fructose corn syrup, number one ingredient, and then water.
Yeah, and then a little bit of lion's mane. I think I prefer the oil version. Or the concentrated version.
Yeah, so these things have been, like you say, they have lore, they have legend. Sean, how would you describe the way the body absorbs nutrients from fungi or things like this that we eat?
Oh, well, I would only, it's the standard way. It go through the stomach and get pulled through the small intestine into the bloodstream. And so, these small, I'm not sure what kind of compounds we're talking about here. Maybe Cody could tell me, but do you know what kind of biochemical compounds that these things usually are that make them so potent?
I do not.
Yeah, neither do I. I'll plead ignorance, but
me too.
It's all such a huge cornucopia of different biochemistry that can affect all kinds of things, and a lot of times the way these things work is they mimic your body's own signals, right? So, one of these little chemical compounds might just mimic slightly a chemical messenger that might boost your immune system. It gives it a signal that it would normally interpret as its own signal. And so they're just they're similar looking compounds. A lot of times, that's the way that toxins work. A toxin might mimic the chemical messenger between a muscle and a neuron, and therefore block the normal signal between a muscle and a neuron, causing paralysis. It's just it comes in, it's in snake venom or in a puffer fish toxin, and it's similar enough to that compound that it will mimic it and cause it to stick onto your neuron instead of the appropriate molecule. So it's a lot of times it's just similar chemistry. For the mushroom, who knows what it's using that compound for, but we can kind of co-opt it and use it for our own benefit. It's the way a lot of those things work. In plants and fungi and in animals. It's just there's so much chemistry out there and your body is so complex and all the chemicals that it uses that it's not too surprising that there could be a natural compound out there that you could use to your own benefit.
Yeah, it might be DMT or something like that in there. Don't a lot of plants have naturally occurring DMT?
They do, and we do.
Yeah.
We all have, every organism has
something to look up after we get out of here.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And what's cool is the extraction process. What's the extraction process like?
So first we do a still extraction in alcohol. It just sits in alcohol and it gets shaken continuously every few hours. Mm-hmm. And that happens for about over a month. And it's just a time thing. And then we do a hot water extraction. So we heat that water up to about just right before it's boiling. So about 210, 205 degrees, and we run that for about 4 hours.
Wow!
And then we use fresh fruit body, fresh mushrooms for each part of the extraction, and then we combine those two extractions until it's about 25% alcohol by volume, which makes it shelf stable, and then we bottle it up and get it out to the people.
Nice. Is there like a cue that you have, like whenever you look and see, like? Sean, you got some. Well, everybody here has some time behind the microscope, right? Mm-hmm. So, is there a particular structure you're looking to really dial into?
So, for the extraction, especially in the alcohol extraction, it's color.
Oh, okay.
I've come to learn it's about color. Once you get you can kind of have a weak extraction that's almost clear, and then you can have an extraction that's very colorful and very dark. So the reishi extraction will be brown or red. The lion's mane extraction is kind of yellow and things like that. So I look for color and make sure that it's extracted for long enough. That can be a big thing. People get impatient and they think 3 weeks is long enough, but it's probably not. So
wow, and then you ship it out, and then we get energy from it, and the world is whole. And then we realize that we're all one, there's no such thing as death, and we're the imagination of ourselves.
I think those are different mushrooms.
As Bill Hicks would say. But,
he was doing some different mushrooms.
Anyway, no, this has been a lot of fun. To end the show, I really want to know what ignited the curiosity in you, Cody, because these are organisms that are so unique and out of this world. And what made you want to put so much of your passion and effort into what you do?
Well, there's a lot of variables that go into it. One, I didn't like the job that I was at too particularly, so that was a main driving factor. But I mean, there's just so many. What really struck me was the beauty of these things, and I wanted to grow them for that reason, just to have these cool fungi growing in my house and things like that. But then you realize that they're very healthy, and they have these medicinal qualities and things like that. But then it's even further than that. It's learning that there's mushrooms like Pestiloteuopsis microspora, which is a plastic-eating fungus. So not only the way they look, the visual, the health aspect of it, but the environmental aspect of it. I hate plastic. I hate it because it's so cheap and we use it all the time. And we need to figure out ways to get rid of it. So it's really a broad spectrum of things that drew me into it and continue to keep me engaged with the mushroom.
That is awesome. Gentlemen, any other questions before we wrap this awesome episode up?
I think I'm good. One thing that I can mention, I did a little bit of research before coming here, but not much, and there's a reason for that. Mushrooms have been around for a long, long time. We don't know exactly how long because their fossil record is terrible. Obviously, they don't have any skeletal structure. But I was looking up some papers that claim to have mushroom fossils that are like 700 million years old.
Wow.
Which is before the Cambrian explosion, before all the major groups of plants and animals arose. So they may be really, really, really old. And there's some cool studies going on trying to recognize unique structures and compounds of those mushrooms. I think they're looking for chitin. Mushrooms have chitin in them. And using spectrometry to figure out whether or not a rock has fungi in it. It's really crazy stuff, but they've been around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we learned from our elders, right?
That's right.
So, Sean, what you got, man?
That's it. Thanks for coming, Cody. That was a great show. Good talk.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, we will see y'all next week on Science Nights in the Morning. Thanks for listening to this episode of Science Nights in the Morning. Be sure and follow us on Patreon for exclusive gear and uncut episodes. Check out the latest science articles on our Facebook page and subscribe to us on YouTube and your favorite podcast listening app. You can also listen every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time at BigBendRadio.com. And if you got a question, we'll join the discussion. Hit the hotline at 432-217-1983 and record your message. We couldn't do this without you, and thank you so much for listening each and every week. That's Science Nights in the Morning with a K, and we'll see you next time.